Shalom and greetings from the rolling hills of Judea, just east of the famous East Jerusalem, what some like to call the West Bank. I have settled here and made my home here, and I am therefore officially and literally a West Bank settler, a fact I'm pretty happy about. So, good news this past week, rather. The home of the killer, Yamach Shemo, may his name be erased, of Eli Kay Hashem Yikom Domo, may Hashem avenge his blood, was destroyed by the Israeli army. What they actually do, because it's an apartment building, they tear down the insides of the walls. They scrape the walls down. Everything here is usually built out of concrete, so they scrape the floor, they scrape the ceiling, walls, try and make it as messed up as possible. Leave all the debris in the middle of the apartment. They tear down any of the walls, I guess, that they can tear down, and then they seal the door. Now, I don't know how hard it would be to go in and simply renovate the apartment, but at least it provides that obstacle, trying to deter the next attack. That, hey, at least for a while, we're going to mess up the home of your family if you go out and try and kill Jews. So, kol hakavod, congratulations to the Israeli Supreme Court for doing it, proving one of my favorite one of my favorite expressions, that even a stop clock is right twice a day. Maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, but I have to give them credit about this particular ruling. We're glad to hear it. The big news in America, which does not directly affect us, but serves as a good backdrop to understand of what goes on here in Israel, is the statement by Whoopi Goldberg that the Holocaust had nothing to do with race, since after all the Jews were white and the Nazis were white, so therefore it couldn't have been about race. The Nazis, of course, didn't see it that way. A lot of people have pointed that out in some very funny memes. But the um, race is a construct which is really only applied after the fact. The race is about trying to group people that we already know are related to each other into a category, and then define what physical characteristics, mostly, or temperament characteristics, that are associated to that group. And then we say, well, you see that either this group is superior or inferior based on these characteristics. Of course, it's kind of all a show. I want to recommend the movie Europa Europa, which is a true story of a Jew who survived the Holocaust by hiding out as a Nazi soldier in the army. And there's a great scene where he was, like I said, a true story, where they were just demonstrating how you could tell Jews, and they were taking head measurements and showing different proportions. And they said, "Oh, see, here's a perfect specimen of an Aryan," pointing to the the one Jew in the room. Um, the but everybody sees things through their own lens, the lens that they have. And even if you're aware that there are different life experiences and everything, anything new you learn, you try to put into categories which you already know. And Whoopi Goldberg is growing up in America, and she knows, black and white racial tensions. That's because there is a history in America, and the history revolves around uh, white people enslaving black people, and and all the conflicts that have ensued from that. So there's, um, in a way, it's not so much her fault. She is very ignorant about a lot of things, but there is many have pointed out, a concerted effort in order to absolve Europe, and also to sort of, well, basically absolve everybody, that and an effort to delegitimize Israel and make the Holocaust not unique. Because if we can say, look, this is just another instance of man's inhumanity to man. There was nothing unique about the Jews, and there was nothing unique about the Nazis, or their ideology. Then we can say, look, could happen to everybody. And the best way for them to do this is to try and demonstrate that Jews are like Nazis, and that's why you see that all the time. Everything is tried portrayed as either Nazis or apartheid, because apartheid has become synonymous with Nazi. Um, None of it's true, of course, but that doesn't really matter. The fact that the whole idea of race, like I said, it's been rejected by biologists because any way they've tried to classify people, um, they find more diversity between the races. I'm sorry, more diversity within one race than between races. However, race is a construct of the different cultures. In Europe, where there were not a lot of black people, the races were Poles and Jews, right, and Aryans. And in America, it's white people and black people. The fact that the whites are not necessarily related to each other would not be classified as the same group. Doesn't matter. We found one thing. We're going to classify everybody based on the one characteristic of skin color, and then use that for everything. Now that is a good paradigm to understand the history of America, to understand the history of South America, to understand the history of South Africa, but it doesn't work in the Middle East. What we have here has nothing to do with skin color. Um, in particular because the Jews are so diverse. We have North Africans, we have Persians, we have Iranians, we have like across the Middle East, we have across Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. We have of of course now we have the Bnei Menashe who are very come from part of India that's much more Asian looking, and we have Ethiopians, and we also have converts, which we've had a number of famous um, African American and even African converts. There's a prince, I can't remember his name, but he went to Tor Sameach Yeshiva, you know, um, became somewhat of a minor celebrity. Um, so yeah, the idea that has anything to do with skin color or race is completely just bogus. But it's the paradigm that people have, and you can also see this in other conflicts in the world. For instance, the Rwandan genocide was between black people, two African tribes, but they considered themselves different, basically races. You have the Japanese slaughtered the Chinese in World War II. We would usually classify them both as Asian, and you can see that these kind of things break down because, like, well, do you put are Japanese one race? Are Asians one race? Where exactly in Asia does it fall? Do you include India? Do you include do you include here? We're technically in Asia. The whole concept of race is really ex post facto. I have this group. I know I don't like them, or I know that I have a conflict with them. How do I how do I classify? How do I know well who's in that group and who's not? And even like I said from Europa, the classifications that the Nazis tried to give turned out to be you couldn't create a classification that was in any way accurate. So it's basically been dropped off the map. Um, Now, in Israel, what we have is a conflict having to do with ideology and religion. And I would actually classify religion under ideology. Um, so you have a group that does not want to um, not happy about being part of the country. Some of them are citizens, some of them are not citizens. As we discussed before, that plays a big part. It's not apartheid, but usually when people talk about apartheid, the those who are trying to malign Israel point to the Palestinian Authority slash Jordanian citizens, and those who are trying to defend Israel point to the Israeli Arabs, who are citizens of the country and therefore have like all the freedoms are freedoms, lack of freedoms, everything else that everybody else has. They're treated like other Israelis. The whole argument is a bit is well totally disingenuous, and even within the Palestinians, the treatment is not anywhere close to apartheid. And in fact, since the Oslo Accords, the Palestinians can go within their own territory, within the 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 areas A, B, and C. They can go there without any sort of restrictions, unless there's a manhunt for somebody, in which case they start closing, they close down roads and stuff, which also affects us, um, in order to find whoever they're looking for. But you can, for instance, drive from like Ramallah to Nablus or something like that with no problem. Um, okay, so um, within Israel, within the Jewish people, we have a different problem, which is we do which is called they call gezanut. There is dislike, there is, but there's a history here. There's a history for a bunch of different groups to both be part of the society and alienated from the society at the same time. Um, you have the Mizrahi Jews, who first of all you start off with a group that was European Marxist, that came to try the early Zionists were trying to form a socialist utopia here, and they were Eastern European for the most part, um, and um, and like I said, Marxist, and they were the Zionist leaders. So when they were the ones who led the push for independence. Um, Dragged along were the religious Jews who were not interested in independence. The Haredim, the what they call the old Yishuv, the old settlement that was here, that didn't weren't interested. Definitely were not interested in Marxism and everything. Marxism was also the early Zionist and Marxist ideals in general very anti-religious. Built up a lot of animosity here. But these are both groups that are largely, contain a lot of Eastern Europeans. Um, so the Haredim that we talk about, Gezanut in Israel against the Haredim, even though it certainly had nothing to do with skin color, doesn't even have anything to do with race. But it's Gezanut, which is often translated as racism. They they it happens with the Haredi. You have Mizrahi Jews, Jews from North Africa, Jews from the Middle East. When they came, they were also religious and not Marxist, and they were also poor. So the and they fled these countries en masse, from 1948. A lot of them had there was a good number that had come here, but they were not part of the Zionist leadership, and the Zionists did not like them. They were poor. They were often illiterate, and uh, they had to accept them because they were Jews, but they were not the kind of Jews that they were looking for. It built up a lot of animosity. There's been a lot of discrimination. The Ethiopians, again, poor, religious. It was a later time, so the animosity, as far as religion goes, wasn't quite as high. But and it's fascinating because they've integrated into all parts of society. So you will see Haredi Ethiopians. You will see what we call Nida Kippah, religious Zionist um, uh, Ethiopians. Now, religious Zionists, I want to say, not so connected to the original Zionist. You won't find Marxist religious Zionists. Religious Zionists has come from the idea of independence, of trying to build up the country, specifically within a religious framework. So you have Ethiopians that have gone on to that, and you also find a lot of secular um, Ethiopians. And there's a video. I'm gonna try and find the link and post it in the description, called Israel versus the Ethiopians. Um, about the first Ethiopian who graduated from Tel Aviv Law School, um, and the discrimination and everything that he faced. So we have definitely have problems. We definitely have problems within the Jewish people. We have religious and secular, animosity and everything. We have, you know, um, discrimination in some of these areas. We certainly have name calling, um, but that's within. That's that's within the family. Um, like I said, between the Arabs and the Jews, it's a totally different story. And one of the things I think points this out, gives a good view of what's going on here, as far as coexistence with the Arabs. Now, first of all, I want to point out that in May we had the Guardian of the Walls operation. That was when Hamas started launching rockets. It started off with riots in an area called Sheikh Jarrah by most of the by most people. But when I was here in '96, everybody called it Shimon HaTzadik, where the grave of Shimon HaTzadik, a sage from the time of Alexander the Great, is in Jerusalem. The Started out with riots there. Hamas started launching missiles. They launched a missile that came pretty close to Jerusalem. Um, and Israel wound up having a pretty good military victory. Managed to trick a bunch of Hamas people to going into a tunnel, and then were able to bomb that tunnel. Um, but during that, there were a number of riots by Arabs in mixed cities. Now there was at least one attack I also heard about, of Jews on an Arab driving through Bat Yam, I believe. But there was uh, basically this idea of like coexistence, hit a little snag during that war. There were a few people killed, and I know there were a few that were in critical condition. I haven't followed up on. So, but I found this one story that I think basically characterizes what's going on, and that is that there was an Arab judge named Us, Usala Abu Assad. So she got a promotion to the district level. I had never heard of her. The group Stand With Us likes to tout all these great, coexistence stories when Arabs get promoted and whatever. Um, they, like I said, they're not necessarily happy about being Israeli citizens, but that it's the devil that they have to deal with. Um, there's the famous the one of the Supreme Court judges was saying how like he can't sing the national anthem, right? Because it talks about a Jew's soul yearning. Um, so I don't know anything about this Usala Abu Assad, but she's a woman, Arab woman who got promoted. So I looked her up, and I found this page. I'm going to post the link that has her cases. So there was a case, Mr. Nasir, who from the context is an Arab Christian, and a Mr. Givati, who's Jewish, and they work near each other in the mall, in the north, I believe in Nazareth. Um, and on Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is a national holiday here, it's not a day off, but they do have at 10 o'clock a.m. They sound an air raid siren, and everybody stands at attention during the siren. That's the tradition here. That's the custom here. So you will see, if you're here, you will all the buses stop, all the freeways, people stop, get out of their car on the freeway in the middle of the freeway, and stand in attention until the siren is over. So Mr. Nasir, he didn't see any reason to bother with this, because he's Christian. He's, yeah, he's Israeli because what you gonna do? Um, so he figured nobody could see him, so he stayed seating during the siren. Mr. Gavati saw him, came over and started yelling at him. And the At one point, according to Mr. Nasir at least, and according to Mr. Nasir's boss, Mr. Gavati called him a stinking Arab. So the Nasir went to the police. and I don't know exactly what the yada yada. The this wound up as a civil case, not a criminal case, but a civil case in front of Judge Abu Assad. Um, Her ruling was that, first of all, there you should know that there's a Holocaust denial law, and really, Mr. Nasir was in violation of that. I forgot to mention is that Mr. Nasir, when he was confronted, said, everybody dies. You don't stand for Christian stuff. I'm not going to stand for this. So the Judge Abu Assad said, really, he would have been in violation of the Holocaust denial law, but Mr. Givati did not do whatever the right paperwork or whatever it was in order to try and charge Mr. Nasir with that. So it doesn't have anything to do with her case. The She did say that because stinking Arab was racist and beyond a quote unquote normal insult, that she awarded Mr. Nasir 15,000 shekels, so approximately $5,000 plus court costs, because of a law called the prohibition of lashon hara. Now, lashon hara, they seem to mean defamation, but lashon hara in classical Jewish terms means when you say something about someone that is true but derogatory. So if you talk about, if you're out with your buddies and you say, John cheats on his wife, and John does cheat on his wife, that's called lashon hara. You're not supposed to do that because it doesn't serve any particular benefit at this time to go around spreading that. So because of this defamation law, she awarded him 15,000 shekels. Now, as far as I know, he didn't go around. I mean, well, it didn't say, as far as I could see, that he went around like repeating this to a bunch of other people. He yelled it he yelled it at that time in that place. Um, Mr. Nasir is obviously Arab, so the idea of calling attention to the fact that he is Arab, um, if that is that's obviously not the illegality. So I just find it interesting, both from the perspective of what is the state of coexistence. This is the state of coexistence. Mr. Nasir is not going to stand for your siren, because he's not really part of this whole Jewish state idea. Mr. Givati is going to, who knows what he actually did, because a lot of times the police close cases they're just not interested in handling. Not only things like this, where it's just two people yelling at each other, but also like more serious things like, assault and sexual assault. And then, of course, they open cases that they are interested in, whether there's anything like if it's against their least favorite politicians. Um, but also the state of the rights of freedom of speech. Apparently, you cannot. Sorry. So she did say that it wasn't specifically not standing; it was the fact that he had said, "Well, everybody dies," and if you do, we have the concept of hate laws. I'm not such a fan of, and if you call someone a stinking Arab, um, that is apparently definite defamation, which also does not really bode well for the freedom of speech in this country. So I'm going to leave it there. Now you know the state of coexistence. You know that the what we have here has nothing to do with race. It has to do with ideologies. A clash between a Muslim and Arab nationalist worldview versus a Jewish and Zionist worldview. And and like I said, the one bright spot was the destruction of the home of Eli Kay's killer. There, um, there's more to do, um, vis-a-vis going after, like trying to do whatever we can to deter future acts. But speaking with the rest of the family, I know that their concentration is mainly on what good can be spread. And Baruch Hashem, that's a very Jewish um, orientation. You look around here, names of a lot of the places here, and they're named after people, and they're named after people because when someone was killed or something like that, then people said, you know what, let's create a new town, let's create a new uh, let's do more to and inhabit Israel. Let's do more to encourage people to come. You have the Michael Levine family, whose son was killed as a lone soldier here from America, and have done a lot for the lone soldiers. Um, everything has a everything has a name plaque. You go to any because people want to do good, want to expand the you know the Torah and the good acts here, and so more power to them. You have to admire that. All right, that's it for this week. I redid this because I know I'm treading on race, but I don't think I said anything here that I would not say in public in any setting. Thank you.